Episode number 44, Ken MacDonald.
All right, cut to edge of stage. Great. All right, color frost.
Check. 1, 2, 3. Check.
Stand by, please. Heads to half, heads out, letting cues 1 through 10, down cues 1 through 10.
Welcome back to the Title Block, a podcast about Canadian theatre designers, their history, and their craft. I am, as usual, your host, Michael Cruz, and this time I have an interview with set and costume designer Ken MacDonald from his home in Toronto in May of 2017. It has once again been a busy few months, as you can imagine. I have only been able to get to the show now at the beginning of 2018, but I should be releasing several more episodes over the next couple of months, so hang in there. Thanks again for your interest and enthusiasm about the podcast. We have, can you believe it, about 2,000 people downloading content every month. And I want to thank every one of you for your support. If you wanted to continue supporting the podcast, please consider going over to patreon.com and sponsor the show at just $1 an episode. It would really help me to carve out time and make sure that I continue to bring you the high-quality interviews that you've enjoyed in the past. It is website renewal time again, and I had to just purchase a new recorder because I, dropped the other one in the summer, and it is irreparable klutz. And as a full-time student, it is a bit taxing, as you can imagine. So any help you can to give to support Canadian theatre history would be appreciated. If you have already donated, you would not be hearing this message. So that's something you could be avoiding. Just saying. I was hoping to send out this episode without a rant, but I just can't do it this time. As it'll be a couple weeks since this news broke, you have no doubt heard of the civil lawsuit brought by Patricia Fagan, Kristen Booth, Diana Bentley, and Hannah Miller against the now former artistic director of Soul Pepper Theatre Company, Albert Schultz. The $1 million lawsuit alleges sexual misconduct and harassment by Mr. Schultz over the past 17 years against the actors who are suing him during their time at the company. And it is simply appalling. And I'm not going to rehash the gory details of events that will be familiar to so many of my sisters in the theater profession. It, of course, goes without saying that I stand beside these women in their courageous decision to punch back at another powerful man in theater, a man whose control over their careers ensured their silence for far too long. We have work to do, my friends, to bring equity to Canadian theatre. In a business that purports to push the envelope of progressiveness and tell stories that reflect society back to the audience in a way that tries to make people question their assumptions, it is a very sad and angering irony that the same power structures that allow powerful men to belittle, berate, and yes, assault women are also entrenched in Canadian theatre. And we're not talking about only the great regionals, but also in the training institutions themselves. I encourage you to listen to the interview on CBC Metro Morning from January 3rd, 2018, where actors Courtney Lancaster and Leslie McBay speak about the systemic issues in the way that we train women to be silent about this kind of behavior. I must say that I was very embarrassed to be facing this kind of idea for the first time in my life. I had not considered that, in fact, the way that we learn how to tell stories in theater school actually encourages people to be victimized and to stay silent and to normalize what is quite awful behavior. In this interview on CBC, both Courtney and Leslie sort of detailed in a very challenging and difficult manner this kind of behavior, and it really is a call for all theater schools to look at the way that they train actors so we can prevent this behavior in the future. We need to live up to the ideals we set for ourselves and be an example to the society we criticize. We need to build a theater community that gives women equity and power, and we need to call out and put a stop to this violence at once. We need to demand that not only the companies that employ serial sexual harassers clean their houses, but that the unions that represent actors in this country stop sweeping this under the rug. The stories are legion that tell of companies firing the person who was assaulted and complained. This needs to stop. Now, I want to give a shout-out to Canadian Actors Equity. They've stepped up in the last several months and produced a program called Not in Our Space, a new respect in the workplace policy and program that is meant to be a proactive initiative that emphasizes, quote, collective oversight, according to their statement from January 3rd. Please see the members area on the website for more information about this program, and I hope this will continue the frank conversation occurring online about workplace bullying and move us toward a safer culture in Canadian theatre. Now, there's no way to, delicately segue from this quite awful and yet inspiring story, so I will just move on and say to Patricia, Kristen, Diana, and Hannah that I stand with you, and I am sure that I speak for the listeners of this podcast when I say thank you for your courage and your resilience. Ken MacDonald is a set and costume designer now based in Toronto, but who practiced his first 20 years in Vancouver. He has created over 100 productions with his partner Morris Panych, including iconic plays like The Overcoat and Vigil, and designed 100 more for companies like Canadian Stage, Vancouver Playhouse, the Belfry Theatre, and the Shaw and Stratford Festivals. His work has toured internationally, and he can often be seen in San Francisco and Washington, D.C. Just a couple of notes from the show. I encourage you to go to Ken's website, kenandmorris.com, to see the incredible work by Ken MacDonald. It'll really help give a visual vocabulary to our discussion. And second, we talk about a designer, quote, from OCAD, unquote, who trained as a sculptor and is now a theater designer. And of course, we could remember her name. It's awful. This is, of course, Shannon Lee Doyle, who was a guest on the Bellows last year. And I just wanted to make that right, and when we get to that point in the podcast, it is indeed Shannon Lee Doyle. You can find a link to her work, as well as all the other curated links from this podcast in the show notes at thetitleBlock.com. Now, here's my interview with designer Ken MacDonald. Ken MacDonald has spent 40 years designing in theatre in Canada, and from unusual beginnings, he's found himself working across Canada in every major theatre, working on theatre, opera, any dance?
Oh, a couple, long time ago.
Doing sets and costumes. Ken, welcome to the Title Block.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
So let's start. I've been so excited to talk to you for so many months now. Let's start from where you began. You did your original training in art history, right? In Teachers College? Or?
I went to UBC, University of British Columbia, and I planned to be a teacher. So I have a degree, my Bachelor of Education from UBC in art education. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to paint and draw. And at that time, I had amazing profs. Gordon Smith, who's still around, is an amazing BC artist, and Sam Black. And they were kind of my mentors in terms of painting teachers. And they were in the education department. So my sister was a teacher, my brother-in-law. I thought, well, okay. And I went to it really because I loved these guys and I wanted to study under them. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, I was a teacher.
Right, yeah, that's awesome. And this would have been in the late 60s?
No, I suppose it was. I graduated high school in 1967. It's my 50th reunion this year. I can't go. Well, I could go, but it's all the way back to Vancouver. So 67 to 72.
Great. And then how did you find your way into theater? I mean, a lot of people come to theater from different jobs, but you were established as a teacher already. And how did you find your way doing theater design, especially?
Well, when I was in university, I happened to go at an amazing time. And there was a club, basically, called MUSOC Musical Society, UBC Musical Society, and we did a lot of musicals. So I was in those musicals, like West Side Story and Hello, Dolly stuff. But also so were Brent Carver, Richard Azunian, Merrick Norman, Goldie Semple, and at that time, John Gray and Eric Peterson, and all these people were all at UBC. We were all there at the same time and all doing theater. And so I had a great love of theater, but I wasn't a very good actor. I can sing, but I can't really act. One review, when you're talking about Last Call, this show that we'll talk about that Morris and I wrote, a famous quote that Morris and I still laugh at every day practically is the curiously wooden performance of Ken MacDonald. Curiously wooden is really about says it all. So how I found my way in is I taught high school for 5 years, and I was a bit of a hippie. I have no hair now, but I had long hair and beads, and I wore cutoffs, and I covered my room with parachute silk, and I covered all the blackboards so that you couldn't see that. I had a stereo blasting at all times. I never marked anyone late because I could never make it on time myself. And school started at like 8:45 in Richmond. And so I always chose the best student every year. I could suss that out pretty quickly. And I gave them a key to the room so that they would let students in because I would never make it on time. And I would sneak in the back stairs and come upstairs because the principal had only one leg and only in 5 years only made, like he had a wooden leg. I think in 5 years, he only made it upstairs twice. So I knew he would never find me. And then after the first class or the first period, I would sneak downstairs and sign in as if I'd forgotten, because you had to sign in. Oh, right. But what happened was my really best friend in the world, Sheila McCarthy, was going out with Don Shipley at the time, who was also a dear friend. And he was opening and starting the Belfry Theatre with Patty Armstrong. Right. And he needed someone to design a set. And I had done a little drawing for him once for something. And Sheila said, well, my friend Ken can draw. Literally, like, my friend Ken's got a barn. Right. My friend Ken can draw. Oh, well, do you want to design this set? I went, I have no idea how. But I just went, okay. And I drew it. I literally drew a colored rendering, not even in scale, just a finished look. Right. What about this? Yeah. Oh, that's good. So I had such amazing people I was working with there, the technical directors and the carpets and stuff like that. We were all kind of like in it together. They just would walk around the stage with me, and I'd say a wall here, a door here. And then they knew what I wanted the finished thing to look like. Right. And they built it, and I painted it. That's crazy. It's crazy.
And yet it sounds so familiar now, having talked to so many designers. It seems like that's how many people came to the theater. Now, do you remember the names of the TD or any of the crew that you were working with?
Well, Danny Costein was the builder. He was also in the show. And I think maybe his niece now, who I see at Stratford in some things. He was a wonderful singer. So that show, Putting on the Ritz, which was my first show, the guy who was also starring in it, there was 4 people in the show, built the set. I love to tell people that at the time, I designed the costumes and the set, and I painted it myself, and I designed the poster, and I took tickets at the door, and I got $300 for the entire thing, not a week. Right. $300, there's your fee. You did the set, the costumes, the poster, and you painted it. And you took tickets. But you know what? I wouldn't have changed it for anything. Yeah. I did Don ran it for about 3 years. And eventually he just said after the first and second show, do you want to just be my resident designer? I said yes, and I quit teaching. I quit just like that.
Yeah. And how, you were still relatively young.
I was I was 27.
Right. Yeah. So taking risks like that were kind of obvious and easy, right?
The hard thing was, it wasn't hard, but I went from what was a teacher's salary, which amazingly, when I started, was $8,500 a year. And when I quit, was $18,000, I think. Even so, in today's standards, that's insane. Sure. But that, compared to my friends, was really good, because they were earning $150 a week doing theater, maybe. Yeah, exactly. So I went to that, and but it was, you're just as happy without money. You really are. I was just as happy.
And what about the atmosphere around the Belfry? This is something I'm really interested in, is about how the sort of history of how professional theater started in Canada as well. And the Belfry is now it's an established. It is recognized. It's an important theater in Canada. How about the atmosphere around the Belfry when you first started there? What was it like? Where were you guys in the same? You guys were not in the same venue they are now, or was it the same?
Well, yeah, it's that old church. That's why it's called the Belfry. Right. The office was the Belfry itself, where the bell was and stuff like that, is now the office, and very nice. It's been renovated so beautifully. But when we were there, backstage was the office. So they cleared out the office for you, so you could put your makeup in and stuff in the evening. Oh, right. And across the hall from that, where now the scene shop was a men's shelter home. Right. So they would often wander onto the stage in the middle of a rehearsal. And there was a dentist's office in another part of the Belfry. And if we used too much power, it would go, the drill would stop. The dentist would come in and say, you're using too much power. I can't, work on my patient.
Oh my God, the trials of theater, eh? What about lighting and other sound and other designers that were there? Do you remember who you were working with at the time, or was it sort of...
Carl Hare, I think he was a prof at UVic. I know he did a show called Da that I did. I literally have to put my thinking cap on for that one.
That's okay. That stuff, that kind of memory is a bit of, I mean, it was 40 years ago,
Yeah, I know.
so I understand.
Think who? Yeah.
Well, that's great. And so you became the resident designer. Tell me about Putting on the Ritz. Was it original show, or was it bought, or was it, like, where did it come from?
Putting on the Ritz was Don Shipley's idea, and he put together these Irving Berlin. It's all Irving Berlin music, and he compiled it. There was no real script to it, but he compiled the order of them, and the way they worked together, and the way that the sort of feeling of it. And it was very, very successful. And then we took it to the Shaw Festival as well in 1980, the first show I ever did at Shaw.
Right. And how was... Okay. So there's so many questions there. So this is your first show you ever designed. You didn't do any kind of theater training. You were obviously a fine artist. What was it like to go to the Shaw Festival, which is one of the two giant rep theaters in Canada? Like, how was that experience?
That was really frightening. I also did sets and costumes, and I don't do costumes that often. I do costumes now for shows that my partner, Morris Panych, writes. If it's maybe modern day, I will likely do them in a small cast. If it's a period piece, not likely. But this time, this takes place in the 20s. And I had never worked with master Italian tailors and the people I have at Shaw. And I didn't have to paint it myself. That was unbelievable. But I remember that the show got behind because other shows took precedent over it. And I was painting a part of the set at 2 a.m. one time by myself. And Cam Porteous, who was the head of design, came in, Cameron Porteous, and got quite angry at me and said, "You better make sure that works, because that cost us $10,000 for that lighting effect." And I was painting these strips of plexiglass pink so that hopefully when the light came behind it, it would look pink. Of course, it didn't. It just looked awful because it was just solid paint on. Right. And I did ruin the effect. But I remember actually sort of bursting into tears because I thought, this is not fair. It's my first show. I'm here by myself at 2 a.m. That would never be allowed now, but at that time, nobody cared, I had to finish the set.
Oh, my God. And yet a story that's probably familiar to many people working in many other theaters at that time period. And still to this day. I mean, we try to limit that, but that's still something that happens so often, right? Well, that's incredible. And you went on tour as well, did it? Was it outside of
No,
Shaw?
it was just Putting on the Ritz. No, it just did Shaw and Belfry.
Right. Excellent. Other shows you did at the Belfry, can you remember stuff that you did at the same time?
I have a little list here, don't I?
Fantastic.
And that'll be very handy because literally, Morris printed this out for me today. I went, oh my God. A Day in the Death of Joe Egg. Piaf. That was a wonderful one-woman show. I can't remember her name. A French-Canadian singer. She was amazing. Dames at Sea. Okay, my friend Sheila starred in that. Yeah. With Denny Arndt, who I see is up for a Tony right now. I just looked and went, oh my God, I haven't seen him for 40 years. Private Lives. Oh, wow. Canadian Gothic American Modern. Okay, when I see Canadian Gothic American Modern, which is one of the very first shows I ever did, I don't even know who wrote it, I'm sorry to say. I know that in the left hand, in the upper stage right corner, there was a big sun, like what do you call it? A sun box,
right, like a light box.
A light box.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably my most recurring theme. Right. And it started there. If you look at my shows, you were saying something about windows earlier, you'll almost always somehow, if I can, there's a sun up in the right. It just feels right to me. I think it's almost like how a little kid draws a house and stuff. Right. So, and right there is that sun. I just finished doing a show, I'm skipping ahead 40 years, called 1,000 Splendid Suns at ACT in San Francisco. Huge success, written by Khaled Hosseini, who wrote The Kite Runner. Oh, right. So, I mean, people already come with major expectations. It's a 450-page novel and really, really difficult to design because it takes place over 35 years and in at least 17 locations. So, and it's called 1,000 Splendid Suns. So I came up with this pattern, this sort of henna pattern that Afghanistan women paint on their hands when they get married, and it's almost in a sun sort of shape on stage, and the stage all opens up and stuff. But that show, and I'm thrilled, has been picked up by the Old Globe in San Diego, a Seattle rep. I'm hoping maybe the Grand Theater here, Washington D.C. Back to San Francisco. Like, it's just getting, and it was so much fun to work on this brand new project that people just loved, and to meet Khaled Hossein several times, and it it was a thrill. Anyway, sons are an important theme for me.
That's good. I'll keep my eye out when I look at their stuff. Great. So that you're at the Belfry. When did you start? When was your first show that you got hired outside of the Belfry? When did other people start recognizing your work and saying, "Yeah, we should get Ken MacDonald to do that show"?
Well, let's see. I'd have to, I refer back to our notes here. Oops. Oh, well, the new play center. I don't even know if it still exists in Vancouver. That's a horrible thing for me to say, but I don't know. And Pamela Hawthorne used to run this. And Morris was just a new playwright at that time, too. And so we did some shows. I can see The Story of a Sinking Man, which was a beautiful play that Morris wrote. Bloody Business, The Idlers. I did about 5 or 6 shows there, and that would be my start, sort of that and Tammany's Theatre at the same time, where we did a cool show called Haunted House Hamlet, which is basically like Tamara. I mean, in that you moved. I wrapped the entire house in torn white canvas and all the objects, and you could follow any actor. You could follow Ophelia, you could follow Rosencrantz, whoever, until they died, anywhere, and then you would get a totally different show than anybody else. And we took that to Montreal to the Festival des Amériques and did it at the National Theatre there. And that was very cool, because we had huge stairways and rooms for people to explore. So when I see these things now of, what's the one they've just done with the Sleep No More? It's that kind of thing many, many, many years ago.
That's terrific. Who wrote it? Was that
a Haunted House Hamlet was written by Peter Elliott Weiss, and Morris played Hamlet.
Right.
Peter Elliott Weiss is now, he's a theater prof in Toronto here somewhere, I think. I haven't seen him for many years.
That's fantastic. And when did you, let's skip a bit ahead. When did you and Morris first meet?
We met at the Belfry Theatre
in
1978 in a show called Spoke Song. And I was the set and costume designer. And then he did one more show. I can't think of what it was. But we both had different partners, and we were, and then we sort of met again in the early 80s and fell in love, and we've been together for 37 years now.
That's great. I think it's now, we could probably start talking about The Last Call too. So this is the first show that you and Morris did like...
Look, I have hair. I have hair in this picture.
Yes, if you go to, this is morrisandken.com, is that right?
KenandMorris.com.
Ken and Morris, KenandMorris.com.
One word, Ken and Morris.
KenandMorris.com. If you go there, you'll be able to see the picture from The Last Call where Ken and Morris are actually starring in The Last Call. So tell me the story about how that began and how you guys figured out, because you were the musical director on that show as well, right?
I was the composer and the musical director.
Right.
I think I was just telling you a bit ago that I came home one day, I don't mean out somewhere, and Morris said, we're going to write a musical. I went, well, I don't know how to write a musical. I've never written any music. Right. Well, we're going to do it. And I've written the first set of lyrics. Right. It's about two guys. He had a dream. He literally had a dream that the two of us were on a beach and were stranded, and I was blinded, and there'd been a nuclear bomb. At the time, this is 1981, probably when we were writing it, 81. There was still a sort of a real scare of a nuclear threat. And it was a dream he'd had, and it just inspired him to write this play. So it's a play, a musical about me, a man who's been blinded by the bomb, and him, an escaped convict, because the bomb burned down the jail and he got out. We are the only two people left on Earth. I don't know that because I'm blind. He doesn't know that because he's crazy. So he thinks we're going to put on a cabaret. So at gunpoint to my head, we put on a cabaret for no one. So there's a grand piano with a rose in a destroyed set. That's what the set usually looks like. So he came home and put this music on the piano. And he went out shopping or something like that. And he came back an hour or two later, and I had written a song. And I went, oh, I can do this. It's so bizarre. So then he just kept doing that. And we worked on it for months. And our landlady downstairs happened to be the general manager of Tammany's Theatre. And Tammany's Theatre was a very influential and kind of crazy, hippie kind of theater company at the time. And we're very open to hearing our songs. They heard them. They loved them. They said, finish it and we'll do it. And they did. And our friend Sue Astley directed it. And it was a huge, huge hit. Opening night was so scary. It was at the Vancouver East Cultural Centre. We arrived, and the people were lined up around the block. And we got to our dressing room. It was filled with flowers. And I was so scared. I mean, so scared. I had hardly ever, except for in university, in small roles, performed. And this was big. This is just me and Morris. And then at the very end, there's this song I wrote called Last Call. It's a very catchy song. And one guy in the audience leaped up basically on a table and went, "Do it again." And the whole audience sang it. And it was like, oh my God. The response was incredible. And so it got rave reviews, and we traveled across the country with it, and we did a CBC special of it. And interestingly, you say you lit it.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I did it at the Globe Theatre in 2003, maybe, or 4.
And who did the set? Do you know?
Oh,
put you on the spot, you see.
I've now forgotten. The set designer and costume designer for The Last Call at the Globe was Dieter Schurig. I didn't want to disrespect Dieter. Now just back to the interview. Bye.
Is the globe in the round?
It is in the
Yeah,
round.
okay.
Yeah. It was a giant. Basically, it was a crater. It was a sort of a. I think it had some sort of lip that we had lit underneath as well, so you could
Right.
sort of see the rim of the crater. And Alan Moon and Patrick McManus were in it.
Right.
And Alan Moon played the piano. I was thinking we had a synclavier system,
Yeah.
so he could fake it. He could fill into the. He could write the bits that were very difficult to act and sing and play at the same time, so it would come back. And it would obviously the piano. The Yamaha would play
kept playing.
for him. Yeah, and he would sort of play over top of it. So he didn't have to think about what he was playing, but it would be as expressive.
So bizarre, because I musical directed it once with Chris Thomas, wonderful fellow who I don't think he acts anymore. He raises horses. He's married to Lucy Peacock in Stratford. And he and, I have to think who, David Sarita, an amazing singer, pianist in Toronto. You can still see playing in clubs, and I love him. And I remember having to, so I only had written out the score for myself. Right. I mean, I wrote a melody line and a chord chart. Like you could play the guitar to it basically. But that's how, when I write music, which I haven't done for a million years, is that's what I do. I write the melody line just so that I remember. This is what key we're in, then I just make it up. Yeah. So we actually hired someone to listen to the tape of it and write down the entire piano. Right. Which was an amazing amount of work for them. Handwrite it down. Like now you would just play it and it would be printed out. But so he hand wrote it in hundreds of pages on this huge manuscript paper, and then people would try to learn it from that. And it was just however I played the piano. I wasn't thinking in terms of chord structure and stuff.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's exactly how I play the piano as well. And
Do
that's
you?
how I remember. I don't read music very well, but I guitar tabs is how I play.
Me too.
Anything. That's the easiest
Anything.
way. Yeah.
You can put any song in front of me, especially if I know it. It's very handy. But if you've got the chord chart there, I'm fine. I can fill in. I know all the arpeggi. I know everything else. Exactly. But I can't just sit down and read a classic or read a Broadway score sheet or something. I'm
the same way. Yeah, it would frighten the hell out of me.
Me too.
So did you have any musical training before you did that, or was it
just
pick it up?
I totally picked it up. I have like grade 6 Royal Conservatory, for Elise, whatever. And then I wanted to play what it sounds so old fashioned to say, pop piano was what my parents called it. Yeah. And what I wanted to be kind of like to play Elton John songs and things, And I realized I could play by ear, and I still can. If I hear a song, I can basically play it. So I told my parents when I was just going to start grade 7, I don't want to take piano lessons anymore. It's not like I was a sporty guy, but I couldn't do a lot of things with my friends because I had to practice the piano or go to my piano lessons and stuff. And I didn't want to play sonatinas, and I just, I hated it. Yeah. And allegros and boleros, all this. And so once I quit, I by no means quit playing the piano. In fact, I played a lot more. Yeah. And my parents actually really encouraged it. Yeah. Many dinner I got out of playing the dishes if I would play the piano and sing. Right. So I did.
Fantastic. So after that, first of all, tell me about the TV adaptation of Last Call. Like, obviously, it was a very successful production, so they wanted to put it on. How did that come about? Do you remember how CBC picked it up? Like, where did the budget come from, and what was it? What context was it produced in? Was it
the fellow's name was Don Williams, and he was a TV director / producer for CBC. I guess he must have seen it in Vancouver, but he came to Thunder Bay when we were playing. Yeah. I'll go back for a second. Thunder Bay, sorry. We played in the Ukrainian Labor Temple, where our dressing room was the sort of coat rack room. Right. And in intermission, when we were on stage, the Ukrainian ladies made pierogies in that room. So they moved our costumes, and then it was covered in flour until we came back down again. and we had no washroom. Right. So we had to, in full costume, in which like I've got bandages and blood on, and Morris is like crazy. We had to either wait till all the patrons had used the one bathroom so that we could use it. Otherwise, like, how embarrassing, how awful, you just want to just leave me alone for a minute at intermission. And no, and there was also, you were allowed to bring your dog into the theater there. And so there were often sort of little dogs yapping, and there was always the sound of clinking glasses, because during the show, after intermission, the people who'd had a glass of, not probably wine, a pop or something, the guy cleaned it up during the whole thing. So you heard constant cleaning up of dishes and cutlery and glasses clinking. I can't remember the question.
No, it's okay.
Oh, yes, I do.
So, yeah, well, I was going to say that I worked at Stage West, so I understand the clearing up of the dishes in the middle of the theater. But yeah, sorry, how did you get to CBC television?
So this fellow, Don Williams, who eventually directed the CBC production, came out to Thunder Bay and talked to us about it. Would we like to do this? I went, well, yeah, it'd be kind of fun. It was a big budget, and it was built in the, I remember Rene Simard. Do you remember? It was in, he had his TV show. It was in that space. It was a big studio in Vancouver, and they built quite a huge, amazing set. We updated a bit. It took place in a television studio that had been burned down, and had been nuked. And so there was just a grand piano in this old television station. So we had cameras around. So we were filming ourselves, so we could push the camera around and do funny shots. Because Morris, basically, his character was controlling. There's nobody alive. There are no cameramen, because we're the only two people left on Earth. So it was really fun. I don't have a copy of it. I've tried. Actually, Richard Zunian tried to help me. He was doing something for CBC Archives, and I said, if you can get a hold of this, he said, and I think it's probably on a huge, thick kind of old television reel, because we're talking probably 83, maybe 84. So if anybody knows how to get a hold of it.
I know, that'd be great, wouldn't it? I'd love to
Well,
watch
it'd probably embarrass me to death, but I'd love to see it.
Oh, yeah, of course. We wouldn't broadcast it. We would just watch it in private. Excellent. So breakout hit, like that's incredible. And did that sort of get you known by the rest of the country?
Yeah, I think it did kind of, It's amazing. We performed in Toronto it was called Adelaide Court. Yes, it's now Tyroni's, right? And I think we were the last people ever. We probably closed the theater down. We only got about 35 people a night, and it was in this very strange space. But I've met so many people over the years who said, "I saw it. I saw you guys do that show," and it kind of got us noticed, and it led us into writing 3 other musicals, and so we did, and that was all with Tamanous Theatre again. One called Cheap Sentiment, and one called, I can't remember.
That's okay. That's enough. Great. And you continue to design. So did you do any kind of MD or musical or acting outside without Morris, or was that only stuff that you guys collaborated on?
Only stuff that we collaborated on.
Right.
Then Morris, we put together this show, which we went to Russia with, called Simple Folk. Right. And basically, we were a Peter, Paul, and Mary kind of group. It was the stories, our true stories of growing up in the 60s. Right. And Babs Chula, who was just, she died, and I adored her. She was such a dear friend, and she had this amazing voice. And she wore this long, straight rig, a la Mary Travers. Mm-hmm. Morris and I grew little mustaches and beards. I played the guitar, and a fellow named, I want to say John Forrest, played the bass. Mm-hmm. And it was a big hit. We played in Vancouver for a long time. People kind of thought of us as a real folk group. We were actually hired by a very wealthy, I can't think of their names, a very wealthy sort of forest baron to play at his Christmas party. Right. And they said to us, do you want to just play in the corner there? That's where the group played last year. We said, oh, who was that? Oh, the Kingston Trio. And we went. We knew that they were leaving that night to go to Paris. They were very wealthy. So Morris said to the wife of this fellow who was hosting this party, well, what time is your plane? And she looked at us like we were crazy. Well, when we get there. Because, of course, it was a private plane. Like, imagine, why would you ask what time is our plane? So that was so strange. So we did that for quite a while. And we went to Russia with it. It was a Vancouver exchange between Odessa, which was Vancouver's sister city, and here. And we performed at 3 different venues in Russia. We would sing and speak in English, and then when we said our little stories in English, we would pause, and they'd be told in Russian, and then in Ukrainian. And it was, people were constantly coming up to us in intermission, literally trying to escape the country, saying, "Get me out of here! Get me out! What could you do?" It was the weirdest. I mean, this is 1988 or something like that. It was a strange. Everything was underground. Everything was.
It was very everything was in flux. That was perestroika.
Yes.
And that was tear down this wall and all that other stuff, right? Just before it all kind of
Before it all came. We did go to Berlin before the wall came down.
Yeah.
And then right after. The amazing thing was we've been working with this fellow named Wolfgang Kohlnader, who was a fascinating fellow from Berlin. And we did a number of shows with him. He directed some of the musicals that we had written at Tamanus. And when we went to Berlin to visit him, the first thing they did was drive us to the wall. I mean, that was like, you had to see that. Right. And there were guards. We went to East Berlin, and there'd be sticks with long mirrors on them looking underneath the crane. Your passport was taken away. Yeah. It was very frightening time. Yeah. So Russia was very strange. I had a phone call in my room that said, Mr. Johnson, I can see you. I think, what? and my mom and my sister came along too, because they thought, my son is going to Russia to play. And all their underwear was stolen. All the women's underwear was stolen from all that, because they're key ladies. Key ladies sit at the end of each hallway, and you give your key to them. They just go into your room and take whatever they want.
Strange story. It's very odd. What about other work you were doing in the early 80s? You were starting to work outside of Vancouver?
In the early 80s, I'm looking at this list here.
Sure.
No, I did a lot of stuff for, I can see, it's Studio 58, Green Thumb, Tamanus Theatre, New Play Center. So Studio 58 is Langara. It's an amazing acting school in Vancouver, and a lot of great people have come to that. And Catherine Shaw, who's the artistic director of it, and Pam Johnson, who's the resident designer. So there's just amazing. Bruce Kennedy, they've been there forever. And they used to laugh because Bruce Kennedy, who built the sets, would say, well, Ken just drew it on a napkin. And I literally would draw it on a napkin. Here's my concept, until I finally learned to draft. But I did a lot of shows for them, and that's how we got into this whole. We'll skip ahead to the Overcoat, but we did 3 movement pieces there, non-verbal movement pieces there, and they were seen by Glynis Lation, who went, "Do you want to do a big piece for us?" But I want to go back to 1 second when I say that I drew on a napkin, because I did. I have no training in drafting, and so by the time I got to about my 4th or 5th show, maybe at the Belfry, I thought I have to. This is just not how it's really done. Right. And at the time, it was blueprints. I sound like I'm 100 years old, but they were blueprints. And okay, good. So I have to learn how to make a blueprint. And I sort of hired this tutor kind of person. And I know when they left, I seem to always I burst into tears, but I can't do this. I don't know what they're talking about. So I started to figure it out. I never used to make a model. And then once I realize now how important that is, because it's the 3D-ness of it, I sort of start off by should I get into that, how I do this? Okay. I either make myself a little always white model box, sometimes in 1/8 inch, you can see up there on the shelf, sometimes in 1/4 inch, sometimes in 1/2 inch. 1/8 inch I don't do as much anymore, because it's really literally fits in the palm of your hand, but it's so easily disposable. That's what I like. This idea, no, this. So let's say in 1/4 inch. If it's not too large a theater, 1/4 inch is pretty manageable. And I get a gooseneck lamp, and I choose a source of light. And with white paper, I start folding, creasing, cutting, rolling, doing all kinds of things. I have an idea of what I'm thinking about, like what period and that. And I start to see how the shadows fall and how it looks. And then eventually, I make myself usually a 1/4 inch model in scale of all the walls and stuff, and I make little people. And then I might draw it in 1/2 inch scale in pencil. I don't CAD. And I have had several wonderful assistants, but right now my assistant is Ken McKenzie, and he's got his master's in design from LA, and he's like a fantastic guy and a great drafter and model builder. And I hand it over to him, and I really trust him. And then he hands it back to me, and I will paint it, the renderings and stuff like that. And So that's great. Yes, I could learn CAD, but I kind of love the pencil drawing look, and I'll still do a lot of prop drawings like that. I can draw quite well, and so I can draw in perspective in pencil. I can draw a 3D table or counter, anything that needs to be built. It's certainly all the props people need. I've got the dimensions on it. It's not CAD, and I find the look of CAD very hard and very cold. It has no emotion to it. No sense of this is old, this is broken, this is, where a weighted pencil line can give you all that. And I can't think in CAD. I think, you're thinking, I can tell when I look at a building, like say up at Laird in Eglinton, where I used to go to the gym there, there's a big shopping mall with Winners and stuff. Well, it just looks like it's been done by a 10-year-old on a CAD. It's so geometric, so symmetrical, so plain. There's nothing to it. And it's been done on a computer as fast as it can be done. And I think I would encourage students to learn to draw, to be able to communicate not just with your computer. I draw almost everything now on my iPad with my finger. I'll show you some drawings. And it's my whole, and I love it. I love drawing on the iPad, but I can still draw with a pencil and a pen and ink, like that. And I had an argument with a fellow recently saying, well, you just don't need to do that now. You do not need to know how to draw. And I really thought about it. I thought, well, I guess it's true. I guess I could just reference everything from a photograph, that I could CAD it, I could this. But it feels to me like you think of Picasso's abstracts. Well, his first drawings when he was 19, 20 were beautifully realistic. I think you have to know how to abstract from. I think you have to know how to draw before you can abstract stuff. Same with, you don't write modern music, atonal stuff, if you don't actually know what you're abstracting. Yes. So to me, I think that drawing is an important skill and tool. Life drawing, so you can draw, when you do your costume sketches, there's a couple there of mine. I want them to convey something, not just have I can't draw hands very well and I can't draw a face very well, so it's a little blank and it's a little, and you kind of go, okay, you can sew, but it's learn to draw.
Yes. That's interesting. I know that my experience at theater school was learning to hand draft first, and then I CAD'ed. And I embraced CAD because it's so useful as a lighting designer. Lighting design directing is basically tracing, right? So it saves a lot of time.
You just trace those little things. I know.
Yeah. But that being said, I was always focused on reproducing what I learned to do by hand rather than doing whatever the drawing program wanted me to do. Right. And I think that was probably an important lesson. Yes. Now I'm not sure if hand drafting is taught first. I think they just go straight to CAD. But not if you're doing life drawing or if you're doing renderings, that's different. But to do technical drawings, it's all done right in the computer.
I totally understand because it has to be made into CAD eventually now because that's what everybody does. But although you look at some people like Eugene Lee, he's now in his mid-70s or late 70s. I saw his drafting for Oklahoma. I was doing a show at Washington Stage and Arena, and Oklahoma was on at the time. I just loved his drafting. There it was on vellum paper in pencil with some photographs sort of embedded into it stuff, and it was so beautiful. So old school, but so beautiful.
I think people have the same visceral reaction to Michael Egan's drawings, whom I'm going to speak with in a week. I go back to Montreal on next Sunday, hopefully, to speak with him. And they have the same. He drew in pen. He was so like
pen.
That takes such a
Well,
I don't know. It takes a real kind of confidence in your skill to be able to go, here's my first. In pen. No one's erasing that.
When I think of amazing drawings, though, I think of Michael Levine's drawings. Yeah. Michael Levine's costume drawings are so beautiful, and his renderings, and I just think he's a genius. Christina Petubiak's drawings and her husband Scott McCowan. Yeah. We often go, oh, she makes me sick. They're so beautiful. I just go, oh, Christina, they're so beautiful. It looks like the person, there's a shine on the shoe, every shoelace. Yeah. Oh my God. And, I can draw quite well, but then I go, oh no, I can't.
That's interesting. I just want to go back a second before we go on with other shows. And you talked about how when you start with the model, you start with little shapes and how they all fit. And then with the gooseneck. One thing I noticed in looking over some production photos, especially it was sort of most pronounced in Amadeus. I'm not sure where you produced it, but it was very, very geometrical. It
Yeah.
was like
Can stage.
it was a building up of shapes. And then it looks like I could see the kind of repetition of that kind of, and always different ways, but like you can see your process in your final design as well, in the three-dimensionality of it as well. So I thought that makes a lot of sense. Now it makes a lot of sense to me how you get there. If you're starting with the three-dimensional rather than just starting with a rendering.
I find starting with the rendering. I mean, I'm designing a show called Picture This right now for Soul Pepper, and we start rehearsals in August, and my drawings are due to Monday. I did do a little drawing on the back of Morris and I were playing Scrabble, and I always keep score. And on the back of the Scrabble sheet was a blank page, and I drew the set and went, oh, I kind of like that. And we had done a show called Parfumery there, which was quite a success and kept coming back every second year. And this takes place in a hotel lobby, just as that took place in a perfumery at the same period in Hungary in the 1910, 1920s. This one's in the 1920s. And I love Art Nouveau. And I wanted to do a riff on my own play. That was a pink Art Nouveau set. So I'm doing a turquoise blue Art Nouveau set in a similar kind of way because it's in the same space, it's the same period, and just sort of for fun. And you do tend to go back to some of your old stuff. I'm not finished with certain ideas. I'm not finished with twisting white paper around a pencil. And I just did Barbara of Seville. We were in Quebec City 2 weeks ago. And that set was inspired by both Gaudi and Frank Gehry, kind of. And I literally I would cut an interesting shape with a hole in it, twist it around a pencil and go, cut another one. And I cut hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of shapes until they became something that represented to me a look, in this case, of a courtyard in Seville, all white buildings, but all twisted. Very difficult to build. And I've done You Never Can Tell at Shaw Festival like that, and some other show.
I was going to say, that's what reminded me immediately of the You Never Can Tell set, which has this giant kind of
Nautilus, really.
Yeah, in the middle. Yeah, that's right.
And so does the Barbara of Seville. Because I love that. And I don't see it on stage very often. And I did see a twisted Nautilus-y thing once, maybe in London for some Molière play. And I kind of went, oh, I've never seen that. And I sort of stole that twisting and went, okay, I'm going to take this a bit further and see what I can do. And it's really hard for the technical people to build, but they kind of love it. When it's done, they're very proud of it because it's just skin ply being bent and bent and bent into almost impossible shapes that you can easily do wrapping the pencil in a paper. But then all of a sudden it's 20 feet high and you have to stand in it, you know.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's fantastic. So let's talk about some other big works coming out of the 80s. Anything that comes to mind that you remember from that time period, or should we move into the 90s?
No, I'm looking here.
Yeah.
I did a lot of shows that wouldn't be big for Green Thumb. Green Thumb Theater is a children's theater, but much more, it's a lot of new works. It's not like children's theater where you think that. It's Morris wrote a play about AIDS called The Cost of Living, which traveled everywhere and was very influential and very moving to high school students,
What year would that have been?
Oh, wow.
Or decade?
90, maybe early 90s?
Yeah, that's pretty daring for the
Yeah.
early 90s, right? It was still a bit of a
it was. And
controversial time.
I just sort of, I see, I'm just looking here. Did some summer festival things at White Rock, things like that, but, no, ask me something else.
Okay, sure, no problem. Well, let's get into the Overcoat then.
Sure.
I think that's an interesting. Well, which came first, Vigil or Overcoat? I think Vigil came first, right?
Vigil, I would.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Wow. Because Glynis Lation did the first production of Vigil. She produced it at the Belfry Theatre with Alan Williams, wonderful actor from England. But I don't know whether we had done the Overcoat. Isn't that I think the Overcoat might be around 91.
Yeah.
I'd have to look that up. Anyway, okay, so Vigil is Morris's probably most famous play, that and Seven Stories. When we do auditions, I often sit in on Morris's auditions. some young person will always come up to him and say, "Oh, in high school I played Mrs. So and So, or I played in 7 Stories," and they're so thrilled to meet him. In fact, we were doing a show recently based on John Mann from Spirit of the West. We wrote the play called The Waiting Room. He had written an album called The Waiting Room, and Morris wrote a play around it, and it was beautiful. And this young girl in it, when she learned that Morris was the director, she came up and said, "Oh my God, I thought you were dead." So I did your show in high school. I've never actually met a playwright that's alive. Shakespeare and Panych, but Vigil. Yeah, Morris had worked on it at Banff, and Alan Williams was a reader at Banff at that time. Like Morris used to go and be a reader. It was a great thing, and Urjo Carreta was there, and Urjo ran the Tarragon Theatre for 20 years.
So explain to me that program again. So that you
Okay,
see that.
well, in Banff, the writers, what was it called? The writers something. They would take like Joan McLeod and Morris and Brad Fraser, and tons of playwrights would go there. And then there would be certain actors, one of film, Brian Torpey, and people who were hired simply to do the readings. So they would work every day, and then the next morning there'd be a reading of what they'd written until maybe over 2 or 3 weeks they had actually finished their play. Right. And they get a final reading. Well, Alan Williams was reading Vigil, and he was just such a genius in it that Morris went, "Well, you have to do it." Right. And this wonderful old woman named Margaret Barton played the part. And I've done the show maybe 7 times.
And for just a quick synopsis for those who have not seen or read it.
Okay.
I mean, I can't imagine there are people, but you never know. Young people haven't seen
Sure.
the show. So just give us a quick synopsis of what the play's about.
Okay, so the play is a man gets a letter from his aunt saying, "I'm dying, you have to come and take care of me." So he travels all the way across the country on a train. It all takes place in one room. And he arrives, and she's like, he walks in the door, and she just throws a brush at him, and he sits down, and he sits, and he sits, and he waits. And a year goes by. Now, she doesn't talk. She has 7 lines in the entire show. He never stops talking. He's a neurotic, conceited, scared little man. It's an amazing role. And then eventually, she dies. But not before he's basically fallen in love with her. We find out, just in intermission, because he tries to kill her. I get to invent this. We always call it the death machine. Sometimes it's a frozen turkey or a frying pan, but whatever button that she can press, he says, "No worries, no pressure. Press this button for an immense blow to the head, and this one for an electric shock." Right. And so he's got this killing machine, but it backfires when he tries to demonstrate it, and it hits him and it shocks him. And she says the first words, "Merry Christmas." He finds out that he went to the wrong address, and his aunt, who he's been looking at across the street, who's actually rigor mortis sitting in her window dead, is not the aunt that he's been taking care of. She didn't want to say anything because she was glad of the company. And then it ends that she dies, and just as he's packing her up to take her to the Mediterranean. It's an absolutely beautiful, hilarious play, and you're in tears by the end. It's one of my, and we've seen it. Morris and I've gone to see it in Paris, in London, in Germany, in all over the world, in Japan.
Translated or in original English?
It's in 29 at least different languages right now. We saw it in Paris. They stopped the show at the end and introduced Morris. We just saw it in Japan. They did it at the National Theatre in Japan, in Tokyo 2 years ago. That was an amazing experience. It was a very strange production. I mean, like, it was so slow. And the set was like, just a tree branch and God knows what. I don't know what they were thinking.
How does that feel to sort of see your work reimagined in a different context like that? I mean, it's a different cultural context, and not just in the same thing. But how does that?
That's a really different cultural context. But in Paris, it was just these 4 sort of huge sheets of silk that had a different flower on it: summer, spring, winter, and fall, and a simple little room. It wasn't bad. In England, and I hate to say it, and it was very, very famous designer who did it. I just hated it. It was an empty room with a bed. The window was in the wrong place because some of the action that needs to take place through that couldn't happen. The actor just rather would go. He was a famous TV actor. Just wanted to go to to a football game instead of rehearsing really, and it just turned out terribly. We went to the first preview and then to opening night, and it was at the. I can't think of the theater, an amazing theater where art had run for 5 years, the Wyndham's in the West End. This was Morris's biggest break. And we just literally clutched each other and went, "Oh my God, and it ran for 4 months, but it could have run forever with the right people in the right direction." Yeah. He had chosen this. To me, this play is about this old woman and what was her life before he came. And so I always fill the room with paraphernalia, with things that could have been like, I don't think, and I've designed all these windows, and she's papered them up like to let nothing into her world. And this man arrives. So when I see it done just in an empty room with none of her past in it, like what's made her live up in that room? How does she? We did it twice with Olympia Dukakis, which was just amazing. And she's like, we did it at the Mark Taper Forum and at ACT in San Francisco and in LA. And she's like a force of nature, and she would question everything. Well, who paid for my bills? Who did this? Was I married? All these questions. I'd done this costume sketch for her. I was really scared to. I had met her once, and now we are great friends, and I love her. She's like 85 years old, and she's just amazing. But very first day of rehearsal, and I'd only met her once, she took my costume sketch and went, no. And she took an eraser, and she erased it. And she drew on it. I want pockets here, and I want this and this. And we went through all this battle, and eventually I put her into this old brown sweater and this old sort of dirty flannel nightie, and she went, "I love that." And that was my original drawing. And I said, "Yeah, I know, okay." So she ended up wearing what I wanted, but she was amazing. And all the other people who've always done the show, Morris did it with Martha Henry himself, and Morris was fantastic, and so was Martha. Morris did it with, my mind, let me come back. Brent Carver did it with Martha Henry. Yes. Morris did it with Jenny Phipps.
Right, yes.
And they were amazing. And Jenny has since had 2 hip operations, but at that time, she could hardly move. Yeah. So I had to rig the bed so she could pull herself into it, and she could always, if she had to get up, balance herself on something. But she was so receptive to Morris that he would look over and she would be laughing or crying her head off to one of his stories every night. And they just adore each other. And that was wonderful. And then Brent and Martha were wonderful. So I've seen great productions of it, It's a beautiful show.
It makes me wonder how, whenever we approach a play that's not a new production, that's a reimagining or even not connected to the original production at all, we approach it in a vacuum, really. I mean, in many cases, I was also taught when I was younger just to scratch out all the stage directions.
Totally.
Like, don't read the big description of the
especially
thing.
Shaw.
Just don't do it and just reimagine, right? And yet, here is a production that you are very intimate with and is very popular, so it's going to be done everywhere. And I wonder who I have pissed off in the past as a lighting designer. It's not. I remember having a discussion with Kevin Lamont about what you should strive for as a designer, and how I don't know if we talked about this I interviewed him the second time we had this show, so the podcast. So it was before I was even slightly capable. But we had he always said that his purpose is to design what he thinks is the perfect representation of the show. And everyone's taste is different, everyone's experience is different, so that obviously is going to be different. But now I wonder, do we owe a debt to the original production? Do we owe a debt to the playwright?
I don't think that you do. I think sometimes, like in the case of 7 Stories, another show that's been done in a million languages, and I've seen bizarre in Hungary, and I just ended up doing it at ACT. Morris just ended up directing it when I was down there doing this show called 1,000 Splendid Suns. He was working with the master's students, and there was something that came up in it, and it ended up being 7 Stories that they did, and they didn't have a set designer or anything for it, and so I did it. I did my old set, sort of, which is these Magritte clouds. And I drew it myself, and I painted it, and I did the costumes all for nothing. But anyway, I did it because it was Morris's show, and I wanted to. I've seen productions. 7 Stories is a very surreal kind of play. It's a man who is going to commit suicide from the 7th ledge of a building. And the show starts off, it's a blackout, and then you see, and he just appears on this ledge. And then people pop open the windows and they're fighting and they have no interest in him, no interest in asking, why are you on that ledge or can I help you? They're just all very self-obsessed. And so I had this idea of making it look like it was from the man's perspective. So when you look at any of my 7-story set, the perspective is backwards. It gets bigger as it goes up away from you as opposed to smaller. Because for the man looking down, that's what he would have seen. Right. And I kind of love Magritte, and he's the father of surrealism. Now, this is a very surreal play. And so I based it in the clouds. It's simply clouds, windows that open in clouds, and the shelf, and the man is dressed like a little Magritte man. Now, he has to fly at the end. And I get a lot of people phoning me or writing me and asking me because they're designing this play, how does he fly? What are we going to do? And Peter Anderson, who starred in The Overcoat and also starred in the original production of 7 Stories, is a genius movement person. All he did was lift his bum up and place it on the window ledge, and then his legs floated, put up his Magritte umbrella a la Mary Poppins, and with the lighting change, because it all turned to a star field, he simply looked like he was floating in space, and it was the easiest thing in the world. And I set the set at a 15-degree angle, so 15 degrees back, so that it was safe for him, and also has that weird look to it. And so if you stand up straight, it looks like you're way more precarious than you really are. So I do recommend to people that, I've seen it done in various ways with brick buildings and with, somebody wanted to do it with 7 animal heads. Now, why would you want it? And it just makes no sense. But I always, when I'm doing it, like if it's not an original show, I will look at what other people do. I think, why be naive? Say I just did Barbara of Seville. Well, it's been a bazillion times. What do people do? You might go, well, that's a great idea and I can steal that. But basically, I always just want to go, I don't want to do what everybody's done. But I might as well know what they've done and what's expected from that, you know. And I'm terrible at reading plays. I'm terrible. I read and go, oh, I forgot there's a balcony. Oh my God,
In opera, there's this kind of tradition of because new opera does exist, but people the backbone of opera is doing either productions you've done before over and over again, or hiring sets from Houston to do it, right? And the expectation, my understanding is, people get down to the detail of, does she drop the cup at this line or that line, or when she picks up the dress, does she do this and that? And how, when you're trying something new, how much responsibility do you have, or do you feel towards those expectations of the audience, let alone the directors of the performers, right?
Well, having just done Barbara of Seville, so the guy who played Figaro was just amazing, and he'd been flown in from Paris to do it. He'd done it 15 times, right? I Googled him, and there he was on YouTube singing in France, Right. And everybody had done the role. They all speak Italian much better than Morris does, who was directing it. And he would say, what it was actually, they would say, no, but I'm saying this right now. You go, oh, yeah, right. And also, because this was in Quebec City, and Quebec City is a very French-speaking city, you don't get away with it like in Montreal. When I'm ordering a burger in Quebec City, I'm ordering it in French. Right. And it was sort of fantastic to force myself to speak French. So all the leads spoke French and English and Italian. Yeah. But the chorus basically spoke French. And we had amazing stage managers and assistant stage managers who translated for Morris. Right. They spoke, and he would speak as much French as he could and try to learn a bit more each day. But there are certain bits where we didn't know the first time we were doing it, because we did this at Pacific Opera Victoria, first of all, and that's where the set was bought and brought to here. There's a bit where apparently the Figaro always blows shaving cream off of the face and such on a certain line. Right. And the first time we do it, they said, well, this is where I do. And Morris, what do you mean? Said, well, this is where I do this. I go, well, I didn't know. If you're not an opera person, like we're really not, yes, there are bits that are known. And, there's that expression, park and bark, where people, I think what they love about working with Morris, and what people always do, is he's very inclusive and takes new ideas, and also will direct them as actors. And they don't often get a lot of that. It's just about their voice. I have to stand here to get over the orchestra, and there has to be a wall that's bouncing the sound and all that stuff. So they kind of love working with him because he lets them play around. And I think he gets a much better performance. But yes, there are expected things.
Hi there, I'm interrupting briefly to ask you once again to support the title block on patreon.com. Click on the Patreon button in the show notes, and this will bring you to my Patreon page where you can donate a small amount for every episode. I'm just asking that you help cover the cost and help me to continue to capture the story of Canadian theatre design. Go to patreon.com/the title block podcast and donate a couple of bucks an episode. It really helps. Any other kind of big mentors when you were first starting that you remember modeling yourself after, or?
No, not modeling, because the funny thing about designers is, like, the only time you meet other designers, say when I'm working at Shaw Festival, is in the design office. And you go, oh my God, this is fantastic. Sula Page is here, and Charlotte Dean is here, and Christina Patubiak. Because otherwise, how would I ever know them? Because you do a show on your own. You get to know maybe the other costume designer and the lighting designer, but you don't know other set designers, because it's a solitary thing. I sit in my little room here and I draw. And then I go to the theater and stuff, but I never meet them. So I don't have a big influence. I don't know a lot. I mean, I do know other set designers, of course, they're friends, but only because I've met them at places like big festivals.
Yeah. And you didn't apprentice with anybody when you were starting out. You just started designing, and that was it. You made it up yourself, right?
No. People sort of apprentice with me now. They're not learning anything. I don't know how to do anything.
I'm sure that's not true. What about your tastes in art school? Like when you went to
university,
you were training as an educator.
Yeah, I was training to be an art teacher, and that's what I became, a high school art teacher.
What about your media? Like, what did you come out of? Did you have any kind of Did you have any kind of expectations to be an artist yourself? And did you?
Yes, I think that I kind of, in high school, I thought I would become a commercial artist. I didn't really know what that meant. Yeah. That sounded good. I would draw Pepsi ads or something like that, And as a kid, my dad at one time ran a printing press. Mm-hmm. He was a very, very honest man, and he would ask his boss, could I take home the cut-off sheets of paper that you're throwing away for my son to draw on? And they'd always say yes. And so my dad would bring home trunk loads of beautiful cartridge paper and rolls of paper that were cut-offs, and I always had nice equipment to draw with. And I really think that when you've got a nice pen, a nice piece of paper, it's not as there's something kind of fantastic about that. And so I was really encouraged to draw as a kid, and I think I knew by the time I was in about grade 4, when the one time they put up these drawings of South America on the wall or something, I thought, I seem to draw better than other people in my room. Maybe I'm going to go into this. And I always knew that it was going to be art or music. And even when I was in university, I got sort of lectures saying, you're going to have to choose between art and music. And I really couldn't decide. And so for a while, my income tax used to say composer, designer. And now I play the piano for my own entertainment, but not anybody else's, really. Yes.
There was a quote, I think, from Morris in the Canadian Theatre Encyclopedia about this dance between absurdism and realism. And you seem very free when you're designing. You're not really sort of stuck into a realistic bent.
No.
But
are we on again?
Well, we are. Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Yeah. But how do you navigate that? Like, do you think about that, or do you just not worry about period that much? Or
I worry about period. Like I think I'll skip backwards. I think that students should be taught. I often propose this idea. Now we're into the 21st century, but there should be a 20th century course. Like, so you can say, a director can say to you, you know what, I kind of would like to set this in the 30s, and something should come to mind. Right. And I'm going to set this in mid 50s, and you should be going, oh, you mean like kind of Dior like this? Or I'm setting this in late 60s. You go, oh, late 60s, Summer of Love Hymn. And I don't think a lot of youngish people know that. And there are a book called This Fabulous Century. And there's another one that was brilliant where you would open and go 1910 to 1920, and it would show the radio, and I think that you should know as a young designer, kind of what the political atmosphere was, what the costumes were, what the music was, what the pop culture was, what the films were, and what the period style of furniture was. So you can go, oh, we're in Art Nouveau, we're in Art Deco, we're in mid-century modern, we're in, so that something comes to mind. Because Morris and I will go, what year do you want to set this in? And you go, I kind of really like, we kind of like a no period, classic period, like Seven Stories, which is basically, we kind of go Jackie Kennedy, late 50s to early 60s. There's a sort of a classic Chanel kind of look that could be now, very hip, could be. And so no, I really do consider like the picture this that I'm doing. The Soul Paper takes place in 1924 in Budapest. So I'm thinking, okay, because something takes place in 1924, then the building wasn't probably built in 1924. It's a hotel. So let's say it's 30 or 40 years old. So we're going back, to 1890s or something. So we're going, oh, okay, we're kind of in Art Nouveau, and I like that period. And so then I'll play with that. But in the back of my mind is the period. And like Dana Osborne is doing the costumes for this show, and she's saying, Morris is guessing between 22 and 24. And then she sends me photos of what happens to the hemline between this year and this year. And sometimes someone like Charlotte Dean or someone doing costumes will say, could we move it ahead 2 years or back? Because then, especially in women's fashions, the hems were shorter, the hair was different, the makeup, you go, yeah, great, okay. So if there's any room to play, that's kind of something that costume designers will often bring up.
So it's in the back of your head. Now, the question that sprang to mind is about the difference between an artist and a designer. So as an artist, you're kind of responsible to yourself, really, only.
Yeah.
And as a designer, you're responsible to the whole team, not only the director.
Yeah.
Now, you, of course, work a lot with Morris, but you don't work exclusively.
No, I asked Morris, can you find my CV? Because I didn't know where one was.
Yeah.
And he said, I found this. He printed it out. And I counted, and we had done, Morris and I together, I think it's more, I had in the 80s, I think it's more like 100 plays we've done together. Yeah. But then I was amazed to see a list of 80 that I had done without him. Yeah. So, wow. Yeah. Like, I just did the show at ACT with Carrie Perloff, and I just did with this young fellow named Kevin Bennett, Madness of George III. So I do end up doing maybe a show a year with somebody else. Everything that Morris has ever written or directed, I have designed. For 30 more plus years now. And we kind of love that. I mean, people go, how could you do it? How can you live with your partner? But as you can see where we are right now, I'm in my studio, and then he has a floor above me where he has a little office, and he can just go up there, put his earphones on, just write all day. And I don't really see him. It's dinner, it's whatever. Or he can say, do you want to come up and read this? I've just written like 10 pages, and I'll go up and read it, and we'll talk about it. And the great thing is, when he's writing a new play, I know I'll design it. And I'm sort of already designing it in my head. I'm going, oh, yeah. And maybe trying to push it, what about this? And because that would be a nice thing to design.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do you establish your relationship with other directors, though? Like when you come in as a designer, you have to subject yourself to the script and the play and the ideas of the director and the outcome of rehearsal and things like that. So how do you navigate your own taste? And how do you because you certainly have your own taste. Like it's... In some design, I remember talking to Sean Kerwin, and we had this discussion about, can I show? Do you have a record of your design? Like, do you have a whole portfolio? And she's like, no, I really don't keep that stuff because, it has its own time and space, and every show is really approached quite differently for her. And yet, there are other designers where you see a through line, you see a style that they incorporate into their work. So, how do you navigate? And negotiate your own kind of personal style when you're approaching work, especially with someone whom you haven't worked with before?
I think that probably I've been asked in most cases by that person to design the show because they like my designs, so they kind of know if they ask me, I hate being in the third person. If they ask Ken MacDonald, to design a set, you're probably not going to get a strictly a box set. Right, yeah. You're probably going to get, and they probably want that. Yeah. And, a lot of directors, I think, rely on their designers. They certainly have their own taste and all these things, but they don't feel of themselves that they can come up with that. They may say, I'm kind of thinking it's sort of really grungy and it's in 1940 or whatever, but they want you to bring something to them, and you do. And most often I would bring something and the director would go, I like that, and what about this? And can I just have a door here because I need, so the stupid and sad thing about designing is you have to deal with where the entrances and exits, where are the doors, and how is there a post in the middle of that stupid stage? Yeah. And how come I can only go 12 feet? There's no backstage wings, and there's, so I was doing a little talk at Soul Pepper and talking to some students, and they were doing quite a free kind of thing about, I'm going to design this at the top of a 200-foot tree, and I sort of said, okay, you'll never get to do that. Right. I'm sorry to say, But it comes down to what the very first thought is: what space is it in? If it's a tarragon, nothing flies. There's no wings. It's 33 feet wide. It's, you just, and this is the reality. You can dream about that, and that's great and outside of the box and all that stuff. But really, it comes down to, and so when I work with a different director, like when I just did Our Town with Molly Smith, who I love, she runs Arena Stage in Washington, D.C., and we did My Fair Lady and Our Town at Shaw. And Our Town always calls for a couple of step ladders and a couple of tables, and it's usually wood. And I sort of gave her, and I put a big sun, a 9-foot sun in it, sun and a moon. And she liked that, but she said, you know what? I don't think I want it in wood. I thought of different shades of wood, and I think I'd like it much more stark. And so I said, okay, what about if it's all white? And we went all white, and very, very harsh white, and a white floor, and with a 1/4-inch space between each 9-inch board, and each one had an LED strip, which could go to any color. And Kim Bertel, who's a genius lighting designer, she lit it, and it would go all purple, then all pink, and she could control it. And it was this modern take. So in that case, Molly brought something to me that I hadn't brought. I had this sort of more traditional idea of what I was going to do for Our Town. But I think usually directors kind of, now, at least at this stage in my career, hire me because they kind of know not what they're going to get, but they know what they're not going to get, Exactly.
Terrific. All right, let's talk about the Overcoat then. Early 90s, you said about 91, I think previously. Something around there.
We're guessing.
I'll figure it out. I'll search the internet for the real answer, and people can find it in the show notes, which they should go to. So this is a movement piece. Script, there's a story. It's been a long time since I've seen it. But
did you see it in Toronto?
I saw it in Toronto at Kent Stage, I think.
Yeah.
So how did it begin? How did it develop? And how did you find your way into it?
So Morris and I had done at Studio 58 Langara in Vancouver, which is the acting college there, 3 movement pieces, one based on a courtroom drama, one based on a box and paper company where there was a fire, and one based on Chopin nocturnes called Nocturne, of which we took one Chopin nocturne and had it recomposed about 8 different ways, and each one was a little story. And the students were so great at it, and they loved doing it. It was so new, this idea of telling a story without a single word. But it's not dance, because it's actors doing it. But every movement is planned, right down to the lifting of a finger. And Wendy Gorling, who's this amazing movement coach, she worked with Morris on all these pieces, just to perfect stuff. Morris would basically choreograph it, stage it, the general thing, and some very, very specific stuff. And Wendy might just say, and lift your right shoulder and breathe in here. And it's that detail that just makes the two of them work together so beautifully. So we had done 3, and Glynis Lation said to Morris, I love these movement pieces. Would you like to do something at the Playhouse? She had just taken over the Vancouver Playhouse. And he said, yes. She said, what would you like to do? And he literally, because he happened to be listening to Shostakovich at the time and had been reading some Gogol thing, went, I think maybe Gogol and Shostakovich. Went, fantastic. Let's do it. So, okay, now all of a sudden he has said something I has no idea for. And the rehearsal for it was amazing. By the time we came in, I knew that I had, these huge windows, factory windows at back wall, and these huge pens that flew in there, 25 feet tall, but they were making it up on the spot. They sat down, the cast of 22, about 10 of them were from Langara, and Morris would play the first 20 bars and say, okay, the story that we need to tell is he's going to arrive at his office and they're going to make fun of him for his tattered coat. So that's what we have to tell by the time we get to this. But then they had to listen to the music, and the music isn't written around his idea. He's got to make it work with that. So you hear then on the 6th beat when it goes doodle-loop, that's when you have to put down. And it was thrilling to watch, but they would come up with, oh my God, we need stacks of papers, we need this, we need rolling architecture. And every day, props just whipped. It was incredible what we did in a 3.5-week period. And since then, we've done a few more. We did, yes, from scratch. And we did Moby Dick recently at Stratford, which was another, an 800-page novel that Morris put, and it was all done to Debussy. And it was beautiful. And you know what? Actors like doing it almost more than anything. They all want to be in Morris's movement piece. We're hoping to do I don't know if I can say that. I won't say that. Okay. But yes, another.
We'll wait. And so by the end of the 3.5 week period, first of all, you had the major elements already designed. You had the upstage sort of bank of industrial kind of windows, right? And all these pens.
2 huge pens
Yeah.
and architects' desks on wheels. Right. That was kind of about, and these gears that flew in. Yes. But prop-wise, we didn't know, oh my God, we need this. What about if all the secretaries have 5-foot-high stacks of papers? What if they have this? And it just kept everyday stuff we need because they were making up the story as they went along. It had a general story. And then we knew that at the end it ended up in an insane asylum. And oh my gosh, we need all these beds, and all these beds have to be on wheels. And it was kind of the most exciting thing we ever worked on.
Yeah, I can imagine. And it was a huge success. Was it originally a co-pro? I can't remember.
No, I think it was just the Vancouver Playhouse. And then Canadian Stage took it on again, like I want to say almost 5 or 10 years later. Yeah. And then we took it to the Barbican in London. Mm-hmm. And it was like we only did 4 performances and it was sold out and standing ovations. And then the review came out and it said, these Canadians, we don't need them. We have, and I can't think of his name, we have so-and-so who's a choreographer, movement person. And so basically it was, we don't need you. We already have so-and-so.
That's awful.
Awful. And we were supposed to have a big meeting with Nicholas Heitner the next day to talk about stuff. And he canceled the meeting and because the reviews had come out and the reviews kill you in London. And it was really a shame. But it did travel the world. It went to San Francisco, went to Norway, it went to Australia, to Melbourne, to everywhere. We never got to go with it, but it did. And that cast are the closest cast you could ever, still on Facebook, many of my friends are from that show. And that cast, if they ever get together, it just bonded them like something crazy.
And this was at a period where we still had kind of federal support for that kind of international travel. Did you guys benefit from that? Or was this something that, I mean, because Vigil had been everywhere and you guys already had an international kind of run.
Well, I mean, I just don't know those things very well. I would think that Canadian Stage and Vancouver Play stuff must have applied for certain federal grants or something like that to travel. But, I'm just not up on that stuff.
That's okay. No problem at all. Awesome. And tell me about the adaptation to, again, television, right? It was CBC did an adaptation of the Overcoat. How did you manage? Because it really is, I mean, it's a stage.
Yeah.
This is something that lives in 3 dimensions on stage.
Yes.
Right? Going to that kind of little box or a flat screen is a real challenge.
Have you ever seen the movie of it?
I have not.
I don't have one either, but you can rent it. You can get it at the library. Your local library actually has it. It's very different. If you've never seen the stage play, I think you might really like it. If you have, you go, I miss that spectacle of 22 people moving because you're just on a little screen, even though I saw it on a bigger screen, But Morris directed it, and I did something I'd never done before. I did 900 little drawings of, what do you call storyboard. I storyboarded it. And every day, the fellow who was the cameraman, the DOP, came over to our house, and normally we'd have lunch, and we'd sit there the whole day and say, and in this, he's walking up the stairs, and he turns it, and I would draw that. And it was like a huge amount of drawing. And so Morris would go in with a storyboard, and they would say to him at the beginning every morning at 7 a.m. when we started filming, 7 a.m., what do you want to cut today? Not what do you want to do, what do you want to cut? And you go, oh my God. It was so tense making. I had, and I can't think of his name, a wonderful artistic, I was the production designer, and so he was the art director. And he'd done lots of film. I'd never done any. And so basically, they took the actual stage and put it into a CBC, the actual set, and then I got to add things because we could go to locations that we couldn't really go to on stage, like a dock scene, and I got to add some pillars and stuff. It still looked very stagey. You could tell that it was a staged, these new shows they're doing of Sound and Music, so it was obviously filmed on stage live. Yeah. It had that kind of look. But I'm pretty sure that Alan Brody lit it along with the camera and stuff like that, because we did a couple of for Spirit of the West, John Mann's wonderful singer in Spirit of the West, we did a couple of music videos for them, and I remember Alan Brody lighting it live as it happened. It was a one shot kind of thing. And this felt like that kind of thing. It was tense making. I don't know that I want it. I've never designed anything for film before or after. It was a strange experience. I think it's a young person's game. I think if you're 23, you don't mind doing 16-hour days. Yeah. But if you're not...
I know I had a discussion with Martha Mann, whose interview just came out a month ago, and she she stopped doing film because she wasn't Anne Roth, who had 18 assistants on set, right? Who could do this at the age of 88 or whatever she is. Yeah. Because you really, it is a tremendous amount of stress, and the days are just interminable.
The days are interminable. Like literally, we started at 7 a.m. Now I'm not remotely even thinking of being awake at 7 a.m. To be on set and awake and thinking what's the next scene. And it was like 12-hour days, and it was like, go. Right. For 10 days in a row. We had 10 days to film this, so,
That's incredible. All right, well, let's talk about some work you're doing right now. First of all, I want to talk about the Madness of King George, which you just opened yesterday.
Last night.
Yeah, last night at the Shaw Festival. It's at the Royal George Theatre,
right?
Quite appropriately. And you have, 15 feet of room, upstage, downstage?
Well, okay, so the director really, really wanted audience members on stage. I wasn't keen on it.
Interesting.
It is a set of which I'm very proud, but it is not, and I've said that to him, a set that I would have normally designed.
Right.
I'm not keen on audience participation. Mm-hmm. And so I want to control what an audience sees. Yeah. I want the lighting to control it. I want the set. I like proscenium more than I like thrust, more than I like in the round, because it's a little jewel box, and I can make you see this. Mm-hmm. But if the lights are, this fellow wanted the lights up quite a bit and not a lot of lighting changes, and a more of a Globe Theatre kind of experience. I think that's what he was kind of going for. And, it may well end up being very successful. And the set looks very pretty. So he said, I want it to feel like it's, an old Georgian theater. And I said, okay, then this is a kind of a Victorian theater. Mm-hmm. In effect, though, I hear that in the mid-'80s, Cam Porteous actually turned that movie house. Yeah. Like, that's all fake, all that gold gilt pros and stuff. Yeah. But you've seen pictures of my new Madness of George III. So what I did was I took the exact color paints from the color scheme from the entire theater and recreated a miniature Royal George on stage with audience boxes that I invented to look like Georgian theater boxes would be. And it's a kind of a cool look, and I think the people on stage get a bit of a kick out of sitting there, although the sightlines are terrible for them.
Yes. I know. It did, however, even though it feels like a set to you that you wouldn't have designed, that kind of perspective rendering is something that you do a lot in your work, right? Mm-hmm. It is really kind of forced perspective.
Like it's not forced. Well, okay.
It looks like it's...
Those box seats are absolutely in regular. They're all the same height. It's just the perspective. But it does go to a miniature arch, right, which when there's the bigger arch in front, you sort of... Oh, sorry, I keep hitting the microphone. I do love forced perspective, and I've used it in lots of shows where I've gone from doors that are 3 feet high to 12 feet high. Right. And in this play I was talking earlier about called Earshot that Morris wrote, that was my most fun forced perspective. It was... did you ever see it? Randy Houston at Tarragon in the extra space. So it's this room where if you walk to the back of the room upstage, your head would actually touch the ceiling. Yeah. When you're at the front of the stage, things are in real size. There's a kitchen, an old arborite kitchen table, and then a sink. But as the walls, and there were 3 walls and a ceiling, go in a distinct forced perspective. So when time you get to the back wall, there's a little chair that's probably only 2 feet tall, and a little couch and sweater, and a little pair of jeans, and a little fuse box, and a light little door. But the audience is still fooled because the perspective is correct. Until Randy first time walks up stage and picks up a pair of jeans from a little chair, and they're only 2 feet tall. Right, yeah. They kind of gasp. It's sort of, and I've done it in a few shows. In The Imaginary Invalid, I did a huge perspective with this beautiful throne at the back. Then he brings it up to sit on it. It's like it's a doll's chair almost. So that's great fun to do. And that's the kind of thing you can control when you're in a proscenium. And when I'm working in thrust, or I don't know if I've ever done a show in the round, I'm conscious of that woman sitting there in that awful pink parka and that guy picking his nose and this guy asleep and that child, I go, I don't want them in my picture.
Yeah.
So this was my fight with this fellow who directed the show. I don't want those people. We even talked at one time about backstage maybe having like black choir gowns for them with different sizes, that when you're up there in those things, you're kind of, but he kind of liked the idea of them moving around and stuff up there. So it was a bit of a battle in terms of our thoughts.
I know at the courthouse in at the Shaw Festival, as a lighting designer, it's the bane of your existence because it's the summer and everyone's wearing white pants
Or
and they
shorts.
sit in the front row.
I know.
And you have to, but you can't cut light off the front row because you're going to move. You have to light somebody at the corner of the stage, so you end up lighting the first row up until the the chest. It's just,
I know, and
it's frustrating as.
And if it's hot in there, which it can be so hot in the courthouse that you think you'll die, so you're having a little snooze. You don't want to be caught in the light.
That's fantastic. So what else? Let's talk about. Oh, I was going to look at. I'm just flipping my first notes here. The other stuff you're working on currently. Well, let me just talk about kind of a time thing as well. So you in the early '80s, you designed Putting on the Ritz, and then you come back 20 years later, 25 years later, to work at Shaw again. How did that feel? Like, do you have any connection? Was it a completely new experience?
It's just like,
did you remember, did it bring back what you felt like in the early 80s? And what did you learn over that period?
it was at the Royal George again. That the Putting on the Ritz was at the Royal George. And in fact, I think it was the very first show in the Royal George. But I had grown so much, as I told you. I mean, I knew nothing when I designed that show. So by the time I came back 23 years later, I felt like, okay, I can design. Although I was very scared. I was saying that Alan Brody and Leslie McMillan was the general manager at the time, and I love her. She works at Theatre Calgary now. They said, oh, you can do this. Because you know what? There's a fear, at least from me, when I lived in Vancouver, that I don't know, am I good enough? I'm big. Can I go to Toronto to the festivals? Can I design at Stratford and Shaw? And now that I've done a few shows in the States, like at ACT, in San Francisco, in this huge theater, and in Washington's arena and stuff, you go, it's the same thing. I've never done a show for Broadway or anything, and it'd be great to do, but I think in the long run, it would be the same thing. You're dealing with the people. If you like them, they like you, and you've got the drawings. I found, there's nothing to be afraid of. Yeah. And in fact, I was really frightened doing my first opera. I thought, opera, I don't know anything about opera, and it's so huge. It's the same thing on a bigger scale. Yeah. You have a bit more, you have a higher ceiling. Yeah. You're doing it at the Queen Elizabeth Theatre instead of the Queen Elizabeth stage. So all of a sudden you've got a 55-foot wide stage and you've got like 40-foot high things. But when you're folding paper to make your model, it's the same thing. Yeah. So, it's not something as a young designer to be afraid of when you get offered something that seems like, oh my God, I don't know how to do that. Because really, designing a show for a storefront or designing a show at Shaw, you still have to do the drawings. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And how about your move to Toronto? So you were in Vancouver up till about 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Early 2000s, right?
About 13 years ago. We bought a tiny little apartment here. Well, the weird thing was, when we first moved here, and now prices have changed so much, but Toronto was kind of cheap compared to Vancouver. Right? We went, wow, you can get a house for the same price as a little tiny apartment in Vancouver. And we were looking at apartments here, and we found a little house, and we found this house that we're in right now for a really good price. And so we bought that, and we sold our house in Vancouver eventually. It was a transition that I just felt that we both felt we needed to make. We'd been asked to work at Stratford and at Shaw and at Tarragon and at Ken Stage, and there wasn't enough, especially after the Vancouver playoffs went, although that happened once we moved here, to keep us in Vancouver other than dear friends, And we love to go back into a show, back to the show at the Arts Club or somewhere, anytime. I love being in Vancouver. I still love working with the people that I've worked with for years there. But really, there's just not as much to do as there is here. It's just a bigger population.
And what about the difference in, for those who don't work kind of across the country, it's really easy, especially if you work in Toronto, which is like this sinkhole of of ego. It's very easy to forget that things are different as out of Toronto. And how would you compare the two communities? I mean, it's small. Vancouver it's a big city, but still a smaller theater community,
Yeah.
right? And it's all much more, people do a lot of film out there as well. So
Yes.
the community is a bit different. So how would you describe how did you feel about coming here?
I was scared to come here at first. I thought, but now it comes down to, I think your friends are the most important thing in the world. And it comes down to, I have a lot of friends here now. And most of my friends are from theater because you meet people and you work with them so intensely for 3 or 4 weeks. And then you might not see them again for 2 years. And then eventually you start to become friends outside of that show romance thing, where you find all these friends, you think, oh, I love them, and I never see them again. So when we came here, I thought at first, oh, I'm scared, I don't know that many people, but now I do. I don't find it any different. We did equally excellent work in Vancouver. The weird thing is, this will sound strange to say, but like you kind of feel like because it's the other side of the Rockies, not a lot of people even know that you exist or you've done that. Kind of. Yes, well, in terms of theater in Canada, you end up in Toronto. Not that there's fantastic work being done in Calgary and Edmonton and Winnipeg, and it is. Mm-hmm. It is, but you're sort of drawn here the way I guess if I was American, I would be drawn. I'd want to work in New York. Yeah. I just would want to. I was in England, I'd want to work in London. Yeah. So if I'm in Canada, I want to work in Toronto. Yeah. And I do other shows around the country, but Morris and I made a decision 35 years ago that we were not going to be that theater couple who, oh, I'm doing a show in Edmonton, you're doing one in Calgary, oh God, I got the season at Stratford, and you're not, because it's really, really hard on a relationship. Yeah. And so we have not done that. Yeah. If, as for instance, I did the show in San Francisco, and he talked to the artistic director too, and she had a project for him, and it was fantastic. We both went. Yeah. In Quebec City just now, I wasn't needed. They don't normally bring along the designer, if it's a set they're buying that I've already designed before. Right. But Morris kind of put it in his contract that I was going to come. And I did, and I was there for tech. And it was very handy because there were a lot of things that I had to deal with anyway. I don't know what they were going to do. Yeah. But we've just made this deal that we're not going to do that. And so we have traveled the world together, basically. Not doing theater. We go for big trips, usually every year, like we'll go to Italy or to France or something like that, somewhere. And but we are that theater company who luckily can work together because we're not in competition. I think it'd be very hard if we were both actors or both writers or both designers, and you were up for the same kind of job. But I'm in no way threatened, nor him by me, of what we do. So we work together fantastically. Yeah, that's excellent.
That's not something we talk about a lot on the Title Block. We kind of stick to your kind of professional resume, but life in the theater is something that is very. It's a different experience, and negotiating it is not easy for some people, no. Especially if you have to. I mean, one of the reasons that I left the business in 2004 was because I was looking down the barrel of changes in the environment, theater environment in Canada. I had some personal reasons, but also seeing other more senior designers to me struggle with these very problems with their relationships, with getting work, with staying relevant, not getting kind of sucked up in this kind of cult of youth that happens in a lot of places, and especially in art, because who's the new kid on the block, and you really have to kind of cling to the relationships you have to sort of keep what you have precious, because there's only so much of it out there, right? And if you're not creating your own work,
yep.
Or have a partner that's creating fabulous work, then you're kind of, all of your friends are also all of your competitors. And so that's it's something that I don't think we talk enough about, maybe in theater school, where everything is kind of bread and roses.
I totally agree. I think that I think Morris and I are both finding that right now. It's like, I'm a better designer every year than I was the year before. I now have 180 play. It's not like, and I do keep up with pop culture and all that stuff. I know what's going on, but I don't begrudge a new 20-year-old designer, but I ain't done yet. Right. You know what I mean? And you're not kicking me out, because I don't want to retire. All my friends from high school and university and stuff, who all became teachers and stuff, are all retired, and they go, oh, how come? I don't, because most people who retire because they don't like their job. Yeah. Or they go, oh, thank God, it's the weekend. People say to me, you're having a nice weekend when I'm up at Lobster. I don't, is it the weekend? I don't know. It doesn't make any difference to me if it's Sunday or Wednesday. And I love doing what I do, and so does Morris. And so I don't, until I can't do it, I don't want to retire. I want to be 90 and doing a show. Maybe I won't do as many, but that's my art. And I think the fantastic thing about being a designer is that you can be an illustrator or an artist or a painter at home and do your one little thing. But I get 20, 30, 40 people creating some stupid little idea I had on a piece of paper. Right. And all of a sudden, oh my God, they're committing hundreds of thousands of dollars to this. And I just folded some paper, and you got to carry it through. And I love, like, the props people at the Shaw Festival and the painters. I love them. And most of them have been together for about 25 years. Mm-hmm. And there's a fellow named Wayne Ryerson, who's the head of props, and Donna Hrablak used to run it. And those people came from Winnipeg, like 25, and they're my age. They're in their 60s. They're in their mid-60s. And that's very unusual, because often I'll be working with some young painter, and they say, "Oh, it's my dad's birthday." Oh, I go, "How old is your dad?" "Oh, 58. I go, "Really?" And I'm often like way older than their parents. And so to work with these people who are masters at their craft at the Shaw Festival, that's why I love working with them there and at Stratford. They've been doing it for so long. They're my age. We get along. We all get it. And none of them we're not leaving yet. You know what I mean? And so it's very hard. I think if theater schools keep cranking out designers, it's the same with cranking out anything. Where? There are only so many shows. Tarragon only does, 8 shows, whatever. There are only so many shows. And
It's I don't know if you've heard of the Designers Guild thing that's going on Facebook, and Richard Farron. But there's 450 members of that now, and I think, surely that can't be 450 working designers, but what if it is?
I know.
What if there's 400? Like ADC was 100 people, I think, when I was a member back in the late 90s. And I thought that was a lot. I think, what do 100 people do in Canada?
I know.
They go all across the country. Kevin Lamont does, he did the Playhouse, the Belfry, and then Theatre Calgary, and then Citadel, and then, Winnipeg, that kind of circuit. And you go, okay, well, there's one guy, and now there's 4 other people who do the same thing. There's only so much work. Have you guys felt the contraction that's happened in the last 10 years? Like, how has that affected contraction of funding and the kind of limits on production, and how have you guys negotiated that?
Well, it depends on where you're working. Like if you're doing a show at Shaw, say, you probably got a pretty decent budget. Mm-hmm. If you're doing a show, I did company with Theatre 20 recently. Mm-hmm. I've never had I wanted to do the project. Yeah. So I took a very small fee, and we did it all kind of ourselves and stuff. And I don't mind doing that at all. I've never done any storefront thing, but Morris is talking about saying, I just want to do my own plays. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I think, if nobody wants to do them, I'm going to produce them. Right. So cut back. I'm tired of seeing shows that are just a brick wall. Mm-hmm. And even though I'm designing 2 shows right now that have a brick wall in them, but I'm actually building a brick wall. But just seeing the empty space and some lighting and 3 brown chairs. Yeah. I know that a lot of companies go, well, it's all about the words and it's all about the story and the play, but it's theater. Yeah. And to me, of course, theater has a set. Theater, I'm going to take you away you don't want to see a movie where there's no location. There's no, the thing about, I think it's really tough. It costs $12 to go see a movie, and you can be blown away. You're comfortable. Yeah. You can eat popcorn. You can get up and go to the bathroom. Yeah. You can slouch around. And then you have to go sit in a theater, and it's cost you $65 to $100. It's uncomfortable. You can't get up. You're told it's 102 minutes with no intermission. If you go to the bathroom, you can't come back in. Right. And you go, oh my God, and it's hot, and it cost me $1 million, and I had to... And it's really tough. And I think that's why audiences are so much older. Yeah. The blue hair set is really, you go to a Wednesday matinee at the Shaw Festival, oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. And I kind of don't blame young people, because you're taking a real chance. Yeah. So I think they really it has to relate to them in some way. Yeah. And it has to be accessible, and it has to be cheap enough. And I think it's great when companies do, you can pay your age if you're under 21 or something like that, or there's student matinees and stuff, because otherwise you can't afford to go to theater. Yeah. And unless I get a comp, I don't go.
I'm having the same experience, and I've got a terrific job. Like, it's a terrific job. Now I go to school part time, and there's costs associated. I live downtown Toronto.
Right.
There's costs associated with that. Like, I don't own my house, but I looked at the prices. I'm going to go see St. Joan tomorrow at the Shaw, and I think the orchestra seats were $111 a
Kills
piece.
me.
And I thought, I'll bring a friend, and now we're spending $225 to see the show. The musicals that come into town, I mean, now they're huge. They cost a lot of money.
They do.
And you've got cast of 25 or 30 people and an orchestra to pay for, so I get it. But $150 to $200 for a ticket
No.
to sit at the Royal Alex, where you're like, it's an uncomfortable place to be for 2 hours. I just can't do it. And
if you had kids, like say you want to go see The Lion King or something like that, and you've got 3 or 4 kids, oh my God, that costs you a fortune. I'm sorry, I could have tried to get you tickets for that show. I'm sorry you're paying.
no, it's okay. Kevin Lamont has helped us out.
Oh, fine, okay, good.
No, we're going to go see.
Ask me.
Yeah, everything's fine.
I have pull there. That's the only thing.
Exactly. No, we got I still have connections.
Okay,
so we got that taken care of. But it's a conundrum, and I have had this discussion, and people who listen to the Title Block will know that we've had a discussion about how to make theater relevant and what constitutes something that is essentially theatrical as opposed to a movie or or something else, or television or a YouTube video. But I think it's the pieces like the Overcoat that really are essentially theatrical. Like that is written for the stage, it's designed for the stage, it's something that doesn't fit someplace else. And that's how theater is going to survive, by doing those kind of works that are.
Yeah, I agree. Because, if you see a show, I saw a show recently, it was beautifully acted, but I didn't see any reason, and I won't say what it was, any reason why it was on stage. Mm-hmm. It was really a podcast, a radio play. Mm-hmm. It was sort of autobiographical of these people. And I thought, well, there's nothing theatrical for me to see. I'm just hearing your story. Yeah. And really, if there's nothing for me to see, why am I sitting in an uncomfortable theater paying a lot of money to see this? Exactly. And I think that we become so politically correct in so many different things now that the kind of theater that is done a lot maybe is more from the newspaper, kind of like this sort of political stuff, and not so much about, and this will just sound so shallow, but not so much about entertainment. And I kind of want to go... you go to the movie, really, to be entertained. You go to be either to laugh your head off or to be scared or be thrilled or whatever. That's what you should do when you go to theater. I don't think that I need to be lectured at with a politically correct situation that we all agree with anyway. Because we're all artistic liberals. And yes, of course. But I want to be thrilled or laugh my head off. And I want to be entertained. And that's what Morris and I often think when we're doing our plays, as long as it's not boring. It's the one horrible thing, because theater can be terribly, terribly boring. You can be bored beyond all existence.
It's true. And I think that the other thing is that people equate that kind of entertainment with shallowness, and I don't agree. Like, the emotional range that's in Morris's works are,
like, say, Vigil,
incredible.
where you in Vigil, I can look around in the audience in the last 10 minutes of the show and see every person sobbing. And they've laughed their head off at the black comedy before that. And then they realize the heart of it, and they've been moved, and they'll often come up and say, my old aunt, and they'll talk about their mom or whatever. And it really moved them, and it touched them, and it was funny. And it was a theater piece that yes, you could do it as a film, but it would be, we've talked about it would be strange, because all of a sudden, well, should we have seen him travel across? Should they ever go outside? Where does he go shop? It doesn't matter. When you're enclosed in this one magical little room, it can all take place in there, even though a year and a half goes by. When you go into a film, you'd have to open it out. So I agree, a piece of theater should be a piece of theater. But I don't agree with the thought, which is being promoted now some places, that we should always be conscious that we're in a theater. We should always be breaking the fourth wall, always referring to the audience, keeping the lights up, doing this kind of stuff, and being, we're in a theater, and now I'm addressing you, and I'm passing this off to an audience member, stuff like that. No, I want to be taken away. I want to be as thrilling for me as when I go to a movie and I scream because I think I'm right. It's really happening there. I mean, the first time I saw Death Trap on stage, somewhere in the States, I literally jumped up and went, I just screamed I screamed when this guy broke through the door because I was so into it. And that doesn't mean that it has to be a realistic set. I think that all the sets that I do, I try to make them, theatrical in that they're a bit larger than life, even if it's just an extension that the door, instead of 6, 7.5, is 9 feet tall and everything's a bit stretched. I like to make things a little bit larger than life, or if I'm doing a realistic set, which for a while I fought against, but now I don't. I don't mind doing a realistic set with realistic walls and stuff, but I want the detail to be incredible.
Yeah.
Like just incredible, and that's the fun for me.
What about that? Reminds you of Girl in the Goldfish Bowl. I think that took place in what looked like, I didn't see it, but it looks like a boiler room or a basement of a.
Oh, that's the dishwashers.
Oh, the dishwashers. That's what it was. Sorry, dishwashers.
The dishwashers takes place.
Yeah. Very realistic set, but
very realistic. But the grubbiness of that, I had so much fun that stuff only actors could see. I would, by the telephone, I would have written little notes and taxi notes and phone numbers and graffiti. And I took coffee grounds and sprayed them all, and cocoa grounds and sprayed them all over the set and put crumbs and it's just the fun of that dirtiness. I can do a beautiful, clean Art Nouveau set or a filthy set. And they're both equally fun for the set deck.
Yeah, exactly. It also makes a difference with resolution. Like even though we may not be able to pick it out, you can still look at it and it feels like you can imagine that if you zoom in, it would be a fractal of what you're seeing. Like it would make sense as opposed to coming in and seeing sponging on the wall or some sort of theatrical
I hate that.
Mechanism.
Bad wood grain.
Yes, bad wood grain. Bad wood grain.
The worst.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's terrific. I think. Do you want to talk about other things you're doing right now?
Sure.
Very quickly.
Okay, so as I said, picture this: the new play that Morris Panych and Brenda Robbins have co-written, based on this Hungarian novel takes place in the 1920s in a silent film era. Really fun. And then Morris and I are doing a new show at Sheridan College, where all these great musical theater students come out of now and come from away, just came from there. Yeah. And it's called Trapdoor, and Morris has written it with these two wonderful young women named Annika and Britta Johnson. They're incredible composers. And we're doing that. And then I'm doing a show in Washington, D.C. called Sovereignty, based on Native Indian rights. And it takes place, I don't know how I'm going to do it. It takes place like in 1870 and 2017, instantly, back and forth, like every 4 seconds. We're literally, it's Benjamin Franklin, and now it's someone on an Indian reserve, and now it's I have no idea. I have no idea. And we're doing, Morris and I are doing the opera of the Overcoat. Right. And that is, he's written the libretto, and it's a new score, and it's beautiful, and it will be done in Vancouver and Toronto.
Right. And there was one last question. Well, we usually wrap the show up with talking to actual theater students about what they think their training should be, etc. But I did want to ask a question that I had left over from Vigil, that you had done the show a number of times, but you had reimagined the set a number of different times. Is that correct?
No, that's incorrect.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, I have done it a number of times, but you know what? I've always done the same set, same with 7 Stories. It's not a thing of why reinvent the wheel, and it's not a thing of that there couldn't be a better or a different set. It's just that I like this set. I really thought about it the first time I did it, and it works. And it's kind of modular. And there's in the Vigil set, there's these 3 pieces that can move. And I love the idea of this old woman who blocked out her world with newspaper, and I didn't want to lose that. And also, the set leans in like this. It just sort of it sort of towers over her, and it's this old attic. And it's same with 7 Stories, as I was telling you earlier. It's a Magritte painting of these clouds in the sky, and I like that. So I have talked to directors, but when I've done it before, different places, but we've always actually ended up with the same thing. Mm-hmm. I did do a show called 2000 once, written by Joan McLeod. I did it at the Tarragon Theatre, and then I did it at the Vancouver Playhouse, with Morris directing it once and Patrick MacDonald from Green Thumb Theatre directing it the second time. And it was totally different. And that was great fun. I mean, it was an absolutely different show. Right. So it's not like there is only one idea for a show. Yeah.
And with the opera of the Overcoat, are you taking the same approach? Is it going to be very similar, or?
It is very similar, and I think maybe I mentioned to you earlier that I designed Sweet Charity at Shaw Festival, and I suggested that this set is pretty close to my old opera. It was all white, but it was all mechanical and the same sort of period, and all these different units, that if we painted them black and rusted them up and I flew in a few windows, I could make it work. And it really helped with the budget. And so they bought that set, and I'm going to have to, I haven't got there yet, but I'm going to have to sort of reimagine how that's going to work. Yeah. I think you can see it right there. This is the model. I'll show you later.
Yeah, okay. All right. Well, then let's wrap this up with some questions about theater training, because I know that your training was non-traditional, but
Non-existent.
Non-existent. I like non-traditional better. Just because a lot of people sort of like put together their design training at the beginning of their career in the 60s and 70s. Right?
Yeah, exactly. But I think now, I don't think there'd be a single, I get people saying, hey, can I assist with you? And they've all gone through, maybe they've gone through Ryerson, they've gone through National, whatever. They have all the training. They have all the CAD, the model making, all the skills that I just taught myself.
Yeah. I think we had a conversation at the Bellows, which is a monthly production panel discussion that's hosted at various venues in the city. But we had a discussion last week about design, and there was one of the designers whose name I'm now just forgotten, who came out of OCAD. And so she was a sculptor. That was her media in OCAD, and she sort of parlayed that into theater. So it still is happening.
Yep.
From time to time. And I know that I've worked with people who have come out of the art
I think I know
world.
who you mean, but I don't know her name.
I know. We'll find out in the... I'll make sure it's in the show notes, and I'll make sure to mention it in the preamble, so they'll have know who I'm talking about. But what would you suggest? Like, everyone has all these skills. Do you find that they are missing anything when they come out? Like drawing skills, I think, is not something I did at Ryerson. Even, as a lighting designer, why would you need them? But I really missed not having them, right?
I think that I'm really lucky because I did do life drawing and the weird thing about when I went to university, what was popular at the time, so we're talking early 70s, was called hard edge painting. So it was simply masking tape, and you would masking tape and do these lines, and then the color that was up against it was what was important. And then you would take off all the masking tape and your picture was done. It was sort of weird. I never would do it now. But I do say to a lot of students, I think that you should learn to draw, only because it's something that I do. I draw everything in pencil. I draw all my props, and I draw them in perspective, and I draw them in a sort of 3D look. And I like the weighted line, and I understand, of course, that everything has to be done in CAD now, and I never learned to do it. And I'm not saying I'm too old to learn it, but I draw on my iPad, as I was showing you earlier. I draw everything on my iPad now, and I love drawing on my iPad. And otherwise, I draw with pencil. And I think it's important, especially for a costume designer, to be able to convey the look of the material, the folds. And I like it. It doesn't matter, but I know actors like it too. If you can sort of draw a face, some hands, you're not clumsy and you go, well, I'm not a very good drawer, but here I'm a pretty good sewer. I just think I think that being an artist is a talent, the way being a musician, and I think that everybody can learn to draw technically better. Well, this just sounds so conceited, but I think that some people are artists start off with this way. Some people are scientists. Some people are good at music. Some people are good at math. I couldn't add 2 and 2. So I don't expect that everybody is going to be an amazing drawer, although you could still be an amazing designer. But I think it really would help to have that basic understanding, knowledge of skill, that you can quickly do a sketch and say, what about this? Because people get that. Here's a little pencil sketch of the finished look of this table. What do you think? Yeah, I get that. Other than CAD, which to me is very, when you're showing that kind of, it's very cold. There's no weighted line. There's no feeling of the warmth or texture. Yeah.
All right. Any advice you have for people who are just starting off? I'm not really interested in the question of whether people should, because I think we've answered that question a lot on the title block. But any advice you have for people who are committed to going into the theater? Like, what should they concentrate on? How does one develop one's taste? How would you advise people to approach that?
Well, first of all, I think young people going into theater, they'll go, how do I get a job? Well, I would say just volunteer for anything. Yeah. Just your friend is doing a show at the Fringe, then do it. You haven't even got $100. Well, then do it with 20 green plastic bags and 3 red rubber balls, whatever. Be inventive with cheap material and get yourself seen and get yourself known that, wow, that was kind of interesting. So don't do a Fringe show where, again, it's just 2 brown chairs. Right. Do something and volunteer, and then try to start to ask if you can in some way help out at it. You can't help out in the theater because it's all, I went to the UPS store to print out some drawings yesterday, and this girl said, "Oh, I love these." And I said, "Can I help you? Can I assist you?" I went, because she was studying at York University and she was studying art, and she said, "Oh, I'd love to be your assistant." I went, "Well, I'm sorry, you can't, because you can't just come on stage and paint with me because it's all union stuff." But I think for young people, I think if they just do as much as you possibly can, be as creative and innovative and odd and weird and different, that your design will stand out in some way.
That's excellent. Well, you're certainly a representative of that, because your work stands out as something that's extraordinary.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. Sorry.
Yeah.
I have always envied artists who have, at some point in their career, found a style and my favorite painter is Raoul Dufy. Do you know who Raoul Dufy? Dufy. Raoul Dufy is a French painter. And he still influences people. It's a quick sort of sloppy style with a drawing on top of it that kind of misses the color. It's so beautiful. And I draw a little bit like him. You would always know that was a Dufy drawing. I'm envious of artists who have developed a style that you can go, that instantly, that's a such and such, that's so and so. And most great artists have done it. Although there are artists like Picasso who went through so many different styles, And I don't know that you find that in theater that much. But you say you can recognize my stuff. In some ways, you can, even though this takes place on a ship in 1956 and this takes place in a Russian border, there's something about the person's aesthetic, I guess, that comes through. I have a certain sense of color. I like to limit my color schemes. I like to limit my color palette. I don't like a show that has pink and brown and green. I will say to the costume designer often, let's talk about what color, for picture this, I'm doing this turquoise set, turquoise and gold. And so I've got all these paint swatches and I sent them to Dana Osborne and she's talking about what colors, and we talk about what colors will go on that set. Right. I don't like costumes that come on that are all of a sudden just sort of any everyday kind of thing. I like to create a world that is monochromatic in some ways.
Yeah, sure, of course. Well, that's a lesson for us all. Thank you so much.
You're most
I think
welcome.
that we'll just wrap it up there.
Okay, thank you so much. It was really fun.
Awesome. That was designer Ken MacDonald speaking to me from his home in Toronto in May of 2017. Next time, either another episode of The Bellows or an interview with lighting designer Alan Brody. I've not quite decided yet, but they'll be out soon. The music for this podcast is by Vern Good with voiceover by Gabriel Cropley. Please go to Apple Podcasts and give us a review. It'll help get the word out about this podcast and share the history of theater design in Canada. And you can follow us on Twitter at TheTitleBlockCA and on Facebook.com/TheTitleBlockPodcast. You can send comments and requests by email to TheTitleBlock@gmail.com. And don't forget that if you like the show, support us on Patreon.com. Feel free to share this with your friends, colleagues, students, and teachers, or listen to it while you wonder if The Last Call is actually a documentary. I mean, have you been listening to the tweets of that idiot president? I'm Michael Cruz, and I'll see you next time on The Title Block. Just so I don't forget. I'm of two minds. Like, I understand writing in cursive, and everyone says, well, what if, they use the apocalyptic scenario. Well, what if everything just sort of stops working? If everything stops working, the last thing we're going to have to worry about is not being able to write in cursive. Like, think about water and power and heat and everything and food. So that's not, cursive, the death of cursive.
Well, the MacLean method of writing,
Yes, exactly.
And I mean, I've just recently, Morris gave me for my birthday, and I really wanted them, bought a bunch of beautiful fountain pens, calligraphic fountain pens.
Yeah.
And I used to write, when I was in university, in pure italics and calligraphy. Like, that was the way I wrote, and I loved it. And then I just got away. My writing is a scribble now. And more print writing, kind of a combination. Mm-hmm. But I actually like handwriting. And if I slow myself down, I love writing beautifully with a fountain pen. Mm-hmm. So, we don't need a video store anymore, do we? We don't need to have the cursive handwriting. But like, and some things, I mean, maybe we don't need taxis anymore.
Right, yeah, exactly.
I only go Uber.
Yeah. I know. All my labor friends would be like freaking out, but that's okay.